Guten Tag, ich bin Richard Metzelfan here, bringing you guys a brand new 2021 album review. And today we're going to be talking about the new album from the band Obscura entitled Valediction, which is out now through Nuclear Blast Records. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Obscura, they're a technical progressive death metal band from Germany. These guys have been around since 2002, and I've been listening to Obscura for like 5 or so years now. Pretty much dig everything they put out, going back to their debut album, which came out in 2006, called Retribution, which hard to believe that's now 15 years old. And I thought that was a pretty good album, but I think after that, the band has just gotten better. With their second album, Cosmogenesis, that was really good. And like between Cosmogenesis, Omnivium, which is probably my favorite Obscura album, Acroasis, and their previous album Diluvium, like those 4 albums were pretty much concept albums, were a 4-part series where it talks about like the 4 seasons. And with this new album, A Valediction, the band's 6th full length, this is pretty much part of another 3 concept series. And I just think it's pretty much like almost a new start. Like I remember when I interviewed Stefan over at the phone, it pretty much like starts, it's pretty much a new concept for the band. And also would consider this also like a new beginning, because with this album, or the previous album Diluvium, the band had a lineup change where the rest of the band apart from Stefan had left, and they had a new lineup, but they got 2 former members rejoining the band. They got former member Jerome Paul Thesseling, their old bassist that played on the Cosmogenesis and Omnivium back, and Christian Muenzer is also back in the band, and as well who played on those first couple records. And then they got a new drummer, David Diepold, and I just think is a really great drummer. Pretty much filled in the shoes of Sebastian Lanzer, or even one of my favorite drummers, Hannes Grossman. So yeah, and this album, in my opinion, I don't think Obscura can do no wrong. Let's just talk like the vocals. I think the vocal work in general has just really stepped it up. Like I really think Stefan really stepped up his game. I don't know. I just think his vocals have really improved a lot. And this album showcases a new side of Obscura, where they also incorporate a little bit of clean singing, which is never really heard on an Obscura album. And it really just, I think, opened up a new door for the band. And the guitar work from Stefan as well as Christian, both their guitar playing is just really sick. Both come up with some great riffs and leads. And the bass playing from Jerome is really great. Like the fretless bass sound is really heard really well. And David Diepold, I think, does a really great job handling the drums. So without further ado, let's dive into this album track by track. Now, starting things off is the song Forsaken. Now, when I first heard this song, it kind of reminds me a little bit of something from Omnivium, with sort of like the use of acoustic guitars, some really catchy syncopated riffs, and that fretless bass you hear, and some groovy sections of drums that are just blasting. And I think this is just an absolute treat and a really great way to start off A Valediction. And then we move on to Solaris. Now, Solaris is a maximum crusher that just begs for like repeat listenings in order. They're just with all the like the twists and the turns and everything. Next up is the title track, A Valediction. Now, this is pretty much seen where the band is like showing like the new era of extreme music, as it sort of combines sort of like the virtuosic songwriting and some surprisingly catching melodies and some really great craftsmanship. When Stars Collide is up next. Now, this is a great speedy song with some great vibe, and it really almost kind of sounds very positive sounding and has a little bit of an upbeat vibe to it. And this song also features a guest vocals from Bjorn from Soilwork, and I think it's a really delight to hear. Sorry. Next up is In Unity. I think it's a pretty good song. I really think it's sick. Devoured Usurper, probably butchered that, but I just think this song is pretty much there to let you know the band hasn't forgotten how to do their best, like progressive kind of like death metal bathed with sort of like swampy kind of symptoms, just really brutal. The Beyond is up next. Now this is a literal massive wall of sound, and I love the intricacies in the music are very distinguishable. The crushing drums, the riffs, akin to sort of like the really great sections, and a gravitating fretless bass that just pulls you really in, and just that gorgeous rich solos just makes the song really classy. Next up is a very interesting song which is called Orbital Elements 2. Now this is a song I was really looking forward to when I first heard the track listing for this album, and then this pretty much follows up the original Orbital Elements from the Cosmogenesis album, and this song is like an instrumental music with excellence, just some tasteful rhythm sections with space of like guitar leads, a lovely fretless bass solo, and a wide like encompassing and just a super engaging drum solo that brings the song together and creates something that is truly one for the ages. Next up is The Neuromancer. Now this is another one of my favorites from this album, and there's some scorching leads on this album which just highlight sort of Christian's great musical ability, and his take on like the neoclassical shred highlights his timeless iniquity of classical music. And the bass lines in here just even then sort of like sing as like the rhythm section, which is just insane. And Stefan's vocals really just incorporates sort of like a new force of energy in this record, and it's just really just creative as ever. Next up is In Adversity. Now this is another brilliant song with some really great rhythm sections, playing, and syncopation, which is not heard from the previous albums. Yeah, it just feels kind of like a weird nostalgic feeling to it. But it talks about like the band bringing out their innovation and influences as well as Obscura. And this song also has a really interesting breakdown coupled with some beautiful guitar harmonies. And this is one of those rare times the band did not overdo it no matter how good. It's pretty balanced. And then we close things out with the album with Heritage. Now Heritage is a wonderful track, and it's interesting. This song almost kind of sounds a bit like a marker view into the band's growth and evolving over the 4 album series from Cosmogenesis, Nivium, Acroasis, and Diluvium to now a Valediction, which is the start of the new concept, and just everything is just great. Now overall, A Valediction by Obscura is a really good album, and pretty much a new start for the band, if you ask me. So if I have to give this album a score, I'm going to give A Valediction by Obscura a solid 10 out of 10. I freaking think it's amazing. And so yeah, that's my review of the new Obscura album, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the album, and I'll see you all in the next video. And as always, keep it metal. Dankeschön.